Emotional neglect is one of the hardest childhood wounds to recognize. Unlike physical abuse, there's no clear event to point to, no bruises, no scars, no visible marks. It's an absence, a void where emotional support and validation should have been. This absence can leave a lasting impact, shaping how you see yourself, how you relate to others, and even how you navigate the world. But because it's so subtle, many people don't realize they've experienced it until much later in life. If you've ever felt like something was missing in your childhood, but you couldn't quite put your finger on it, this video is for you. Here are 5 signs you might have been emotionally neglected as a child. One of the most common signs of emotional neglect is that your feelings were often ignored or dismissed. Maybe you were told to stop crying, to calm down, or that your emotions were too much for others to handle. Over time, this teaches a child that their emotions are invalid or unimportant. You might have learned to bottle up your feelings, believing they didn't matter, or that expressing them would only lead to rejection. This can create a pattern of emotional suppression that follows you into adulthood. But here's the truth. Your emotions are valid, and they always have been. They deserve to be seen, heard, and understood. Another sign of emotional neglect is that you had to deal with your problems alone. Instead of receiving comfort or guidance when you were upset, you were left to figure things out on your own. No matter what you were struggling with, whether it was a fight with a friend, a bad grade at school, or even just a bad day, you felt like you had no choice but to handle it alone. This can lead to a deep sense of isolation, even when you're surrounded by people. It can also make it difficult to ask for help as an adult, because you've been conditioned to believe that no one will be there for you. If you were emotionally neglected as a child, you might now struggle to identify or express your emotions. When no one helps you understand your feelings growing up, it's like being handed a map with no key. You're left to navigate your inner world without any guidance. When someone asks how you're doing, you might draw a blank, not because you're fine, but because you've never learned how to put your feelings into words. But the good news is, it's never too late to learn. By paying attention to your emotions and giving yourself permission to feel, you can start to rebuild that connection. Another common sign of emotional neglect is feeling unimportant in relationships. When your emotional needs were ignored growing up, it's easy to internalize the belief that your thoughts and feelings don't matter to others. This can show up in your adult relationships as a tendency to stay quiet, to avoid sharing your needs, or to downplay your feelings. You might feel like you're always on the sidelines, watching others take center stage. But here's the truth. You are just as deserving of love, attention, and care as anyone else. Your voice matters, and so do your feelings. Finally, if you were emotionally neglected as a child, you might now be overly independent and have trouble asking for help. When you couldn't rely on your parents for emotional support, you learned to rely on yourself. While independence can be a strength, it can also become a barrier to connection. You might feel uncomfortable leaning on others, even when you're struggling. But deep down, you're exhausted from carrying everything alone. The truth is, asking for help isn't a sign of weakness. It's a sign of strength. It takes courage to let someone in. Emotional neglect doesn't mean your parents didn't love you. It simply means they didn't know how to give you the emotional support you needed. Healing is possible. It starts with recognizing what you missed and allowing yourself to feel. It's about learning to give yourself the love, care, and validation you didn't receive as a child. And no matter where you are in your journey, remember this: you are not alone, and you are worthy of love and support. Your emotions will always matter.